Hello, I'm Lucy Verasamy. I'm usually presenting the weather on ITV, but today I'm sat here on a sofa with a friend and former colleague of mine, and with mental health being a huge topic of late, we got chatting recently and it turns out you're writing a book.
I am.
So I thought we'd have a chat about it.
Fantastic.
And a chat about mental health in general. How did your book come about? Because I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, just by chance she mentioned you were writing a book. I was like, oh, that's a career change. What is your book and what does it involve?
Well, the book is called Big Boys Don't Cry, and it's really a collection of stories from men from a whole range of backgrounds with different mental health challenges. And the whole idea behind it was to try and get more men actually talking about mental health, try and get them to open up and seek help where they need it. And I came about doing the book because I'd struggled with my sort of mental health throughout my life, really. But in the last 10 years in particular, really related to work, I had real issues with anxiety and depression, loss of confidence, and actually some really strong suicidal thoughts over the last 10 years. And so I actually thought, wouldn't it be good to have a book where there's a lot of hope and advice from men for other men. So
you've got loads of different stories, loads of anecdotes from a broad spectrum of men.
Absolutely.
You're the guy next door to people with a profile.
Yeah, so we were actually looking for men, everyone from the lollipop man to the lawyer, and so a real broad range, because the thing about this disease that is depression and anxiety, it can affect everyone. It's very inclusive. And so we have, I think about 80% will be sort of men on the street who are struggling. And then we'll have sort of more high profile people as well who are getting involved in the book. So I interviewed ex-England cricketer Marcus Trescothic.
And he was one of the first people to come out and talk about his struggles that he's faced mentally, wasn't he? And obviously with a sportsman with that sort of profile, I mean, that was a few years ago now. It must have had such an impact.
It was in the 2000s, and the first thing I said to him was thank you for actually, talking about it so openly, because he was a real pioneer, particularly in the world of sport and cricket. And
where they have to be, where they're seen as being so strong physically and mentally.
Correct. And I think, he is, he's turned something that was, pretty traumatic, actually, having to give up his England career when he was at its height of it after the 2005 Ashes, because he didn't like touring. He had a real anxiety and panic attacks about being away from home. So actually he turned that, real career changer for him into a positive, and he's actually been a real ambassador for the Professional Cricketers Association, who do a lot of work around sort of mental health.
And do you think this will trigger more men to come out and give their story, and even if it's maybe something has gone on and they're sharing this detail and they found some help or some hope, that must help the conversation with other people having a struggle? So it's just got a trigger effect, it's just got a domino effect, which you hope would be the key to this book.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of people in recent years who have come out and talked openly about it, and it makes a massive difference. We have, the Royals, Prince Harry and Prince William talking about their own struggles.
That was huge. Was it a year and a half ago?
Yeah, the Heads Together campaign, and I think what it does, it just starts a conversation. Obviously, gets people interested in the news, which is great. Gives it a media hook. But actually, you look at that as a normal person, and you just think, actually, if they can go through it, actually, so can I. And it's okay to talk about it.
And and they're seen to be the strongest, most stoic people you can imagine.
Well, completely.
And they've been open enough to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think in Britain we do have this, stereotype of the stiff upper lip and actually, hiding your emotions. And I think that's so dangerous. And I think the whole point about the book and about the week that ITV are having is it's okay to talk about it, and you can show your feelings, and it's okay to cry, and phrases like "man up" and big boys don't cry, and
big girls blouse.
We used to say that at school, and actually it can be really dismissive. I find I'm very liberal and very tolerant, but things like "man up," I just think it's so dismissive and really unhelpful, because what it does is it makes you silent, and it makes you hold all these negative and destructive thoughts in your head. And certainly when I was going through a stage when I genuinely was very close to taking my life, I felt I was completely alone. I couldn't speak to anyone. I thought it'd be better for me and for my family if I didn't exist. And you have this kind of false reality. And it took for me personally and others who've written their story for the book, actually going to speak to someone is the first step. And
it's talking.
Is talking. It's so simple, but it's so difficult as well. But if you can talk and you can open up to whether it's your partner, your husband, wife, a friend, or your doctor, and GPs are very much more now attuned to it, and they are much better at talking about mental health rather than just getting you out of the surgery as quickly as possible. And I was listened to for the first time by a doctor. And it helped massively. So that's kind of the advice that's coming out of the book. Actually, people are saying, talk to someone, whoever it is. And it's difficult for men sometimes to talk.
The whole gender divide there is pretty clear to say. The statistics speak for themselves. I know we were talking about Project 84 earlier, which was it came about. I think it was the spring before last. ITV's campaign. I think it was launched by This Morning with Holly and Phil. Had you heard about that? Because it went global, didn't it? And it was really striking imagery. It was male life-size structures on the top of ITV Tower in South Bank, which looked very creepy and eerie because they looked like they were about to jump. There were these silhouettes, but it would stop you in your tracks, which is kind of what we wanted, because the statistic for male suicide was absolutely, or still is, insane. It's almost baffling. It's unbelievable. It was called Project 84 because 84 men, I think this is right, take their life every week.
Correct.
And I remember sitting in a meeting room at work, and we were like, is that right? Is that not 84 per month or per year? How can it be per week? We couldn't get our heads around it.
Yeah, so it was a campaign done by CALM, the campaign against living miserably, and they teamed up with ITV to place these eye-catching figures on the top of the roof. And I think it really did, shock people.
It resonated across the world, because I had a friend in New York who mentioned it.
And I think, the stats, they never fail to shock me. The fact that in 2018, 6,500 people, just over, took their own lives, and 3/4 of those were men.
The stat on the radio this morning, because this year's Mental Health Awareness Day it's got the cast list of suicide, I believe.
That's right, suicide prevention.
Yeah, but the suicide figures are still through the roof, as in they've gone up.
They have gone up by 12%
which I
since
couldn't
2017.
believe.
Yeah, and that figure of 3 times as many men suffering from and taking their own life as women has been the same since the 1990s. And the question is why? Why is that? And I think a lot of it has got to be down to the fact that women are better talking about maybe their feelings than men, and I can only speak from my own personal experience, but you do isolate yourself. You really do take yourself away. What the disease does, because that's what it is. It's a disease. It takes you away from all those safety protections. We're social animals, and actually what it does, it alienates you, and you hide away. You stay in bed. You can't get up, and it just robs you of all that energy that you had. And
it was something we don't understand fully, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think there's a lot of, kind of misunderstandings about it, about mental health generally. But that is going, and I think the more we talk about, the more weeks like we've had, the stigma around mental health, particularly around men, and particularly at work, where you have to kind of keep this facade up, I think that is going away. And I think there is some, I guess the message I want to get across today is some real practical things you can do, and as someone said to me, in fact my wife said to me, there are always options. Whenever you feel you're trapped or there's nowhere to turn, there's always an option, and there's always a better option than taking your life, because it's so finite.
That's the bottom line, isn't it?
It's the bottom line. I think, simple things, I mentioned going to see your doctor, but there are things like mindfulness, which has been quite a big thing over the last few years, but it's been around for 2,000 years. It's not just a fleeting fad. Some people find that really useful. I do as well, because what it helps is it helps you track your own thoughts. And I think if we can be kinder to ourselves, that inner critic that we all have, if we can be kinder and show a bit more compassion to ourselves with a bit of a gentler inner voice, then that can make a huge difference.
I know I mentioned to you earlier, and you weren't across it, but those notes to strangers that you see posted around some cities, and I saw one the other day that said, imagine if we learnt about empathy as a school subject,
right.
which part of it is understanding and seeing those signs or things that aren't quite right with somebody that we work with or see day in, day out. Like you said, they might have a facade. And we might say, hi, how are you? And you've got to listen to the reply. But often we just automatically say, I'm fine, whether we're fine or not.
Right. Yeah, well, that's true. And I think the Time for Change campaign against trying to reduce the stigma around mental health, they ran a initiative called Ask Twice. And it's just a simple thing, but if someone says, how are you doing? And they say, I'm fine, and say, well, are you really? How are you? How are things? And you just ask them again, so it gives them that opportunity.
Have that genuine one-on-one conversation, again, the talking.
Yeah, and reach out. Again, that's the other thing. Just reach out to friends and just with a text or whatever saying how you're doing, because I think giving them that opportunity, certainly when I was at work, which is a very difficult place to kind of come out and talk openly about your mental health, I would really I kind of withdraw, and I'd put my headphones on.
Go into your shell.
You go into your shell, and actually, when you might just spot that in someone else, and if you can say to them, "Oh, do you fancy getting a cup of tea or something?" And I think those little moments can make a huge difference. You don't have to do anything life-changing. Just those little moments, you can help someone and listen to them. When I was in my darkest time, I didn't want anyone to provide me a solution. My family or my wife, I actually just wanted them to listen to me. And I think that's really important as well, actively listening to people.
Because I think I mentioned to you earlier that Breakfast at Tiffany's, a film that I used to love when I was younger. I still do, it's a classic. But there's a quote in it where Holly Golightly, the main character, Audrey Hepburn, is talking to George Peppard, the other main character, and she talks about how she's got the mean reds, and he says, what, is that like the blues? And she's like, oh no, the blues are just like if you're having a bad day and it's raining. The mean reds are a big deal, something along these lines. The mean reds are really angry and really get to you. I mean, this is a script or a book that was written in the 40s or the 50s. Excuse my lack of knowledge of literature here, but it's been around a while. I mean, being addressed in a film like that, albeit in a different sense, there's a difference between good days and bad days, and then something being a much bigger deal where you said there's not necessarily a solution for that person. There's so many different layers to it's a non-tangible thing. It's so hard to unpick and understand.
Yeah, and I think that kind of tradition of using kind of art, film, songs has been continued. And actually, there are music out there and people...
Yeah, Sam Fender's got a song about male suicide in his town.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, he's a big deal. And one of his songs, the lyrics, they're quite haunting, but he said if it helps just one person. And you've got people in the public eye now who are having these conversations, which are so important. When it's Greg James on Radio 1,
I saw that,
he's made a bit more of a conversation. Obviously, a huge demographic listen to his radio show, huge deal. Bella Mackie has got a brilliant book called Jog On, which is linked to mental health and exercise. Different platforms, different people, different audiences, let's say, but having that conversation and making it more accessible.
Well, definitely, and you talked about Bella Mackie, and I was given that book actually, Jog On, and what it does is actually it just really makes it accessible. The fact that you don't need to be too fit.
I bought it for a friend actually. Yeah.
And this whole thing's like Couch to 5K. Those little initiatives that actually any kind of exercise helps, and you don't have to be, sort of marathon man or superhuman. You just need to do a little bit. Just do a little bit, and it's all scientifically proven to help.
Well, she took up jogging or running to switch off her mind, switch off her brain, because it was going overtime. And my brother actually once said something along the lines of, you work out your body, why wouldn't you work out your mind? It's something so simple. People spend a fortune going to the gym or personal trainers. Why do we not exercise our brain in some way? And a part of that exercise would be, again, talking or sharing. Yeah,
and I think this link between physical and mental health is so inextricably linked. I mean, they are so, there's so many symptoms that come as a result of having a mental health illness. Really, you'll get the stomach goes, the headaches, the palpitations. So it's a real physical thing. And actually, what you were saying about exercise, that's one weapon in your armory. It could be talking therapy, going to see a therapist, or just talking with mates. That's another
weapon. If people have got the chance to do that, not everyone has.
Of course.
That, but I think you can do it on the end. As far as I know, you can do it through your GP.
Yeah, and there are, Mind has an online forum called Ellie Friends, which you can do, and it's completely free. I guess for me, it's always trying to be open to things. Actually, whether it's whether it's exercise, whether it's you can, you know, taking up a new hobby, or reading around the subject, or, you know, or religion, whatever it is, or medication's another thing. I was dead against taking medication.
It has such a stigma, but
Hugely.
if it helps, it helps. And I know Bella Mackey's written about it, or I've seen things on Instagram now that has totally taken that stigma away.
Yeah, one of the people in the book actually said he went to their doctor and he said, you know, I'm really against taking medication. You know, I just don't feel right about it. And the doctor said, well, why? Half the village is on it. And I think that is the point. You know, so many people are.
You take it for a physical ailment.
They're taking it, and I think it's not the, you know, it's not a silver bullet. You know, and it may work for some people, it may not work for others, but I'd keep an open mind about it and have it as one of your weapons in your armoury. It certainly helped me, as well as these other things as well. And those are the kind of two messages I'd really get across, that keep an open mind, and, you know, there's always options. Wherever you feel that things are really tough and there's nowhere escape. And that's one of the hardest things. And if you're a partner of someone who's struggling, always give them that kind of escape exit, if you like, that get out. So say, my wife said to me, if you want to leave your job, leave your job. If you want to move house, leave. It's all possible. I just want you. I love you. And so actually just being there, listening to your partner, because it's very difficult for the families and loved ones
who are affected by things like this.
You know.
Those stats that we spoke about earlier. I mean, they're heart-stopping. I mean, they're just. I can't even get my head around it, actually, because even hearing the stats this morning on the radio and the fact that they've gone up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and globally as well, of course, it's even bigger. The World Health Organization came out with a stat that I saw, that every 40 seconds someone takes their own life. I mean, it is, you know, unbelievable, really. But the point is that suicide is preventable. You know, you can prevent it, and there's the simplest of things. And it's also up to the individual. So for me, I knew I was in a desperate state, but I had to take the responsibility to get help, to take proactive action, because I couldn't be in a worse position than I was. I was at rock bottom.
You can look at things rationally now, which is what you said, like as in at the time, I can't get my head around that. And you're saying, well, you can look back on it now, almost like it was a different life.
Well, exactly. I mean, I had the first time when I felt very suicidal, I had an 8-month-old daughter, you know, beautiful 8-month-old daughter, my wife, and, you know, and to be honest, I think there is a quote from a philosopher called Nietzsche who says, you know, you can bear any how if you have a why to live for. Okay. And my why was my child and my wife. And I actually think, you know, everyone has a why. When you look around, you might feel alone, but everyone has a why. And it's finding that why and grabbing hold of it.
Thank you so much, Fabian, for your time.
Pleasure.
And I know there's more information on the ITV website. Britain Get Talking is a huge initiative that we've got this week, which started our conversation, I guess. There's loads of information on our website. And I believe it's just Google Britain Get Talking.